Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us live. It is Friday, March the 6th, I think I'm right in saying. It's 9 o'clock, so if you're watching this live, then good morning. Thank you for tuning in. We're obviously covering a very important topic for not just the travel industry, but for everyone at the moment. Today's chat on Facebook is part of our wider program to ensure that we continue to be transparent, that we continue to be open, and that we continue to give you as many resources and answers as we possibly can. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by our Vice President of Maritime Policy, Donnie Brown. Good morning.
Andy.
Thank you for joining us. We'll
Thanks
be
for having
talking.
me.
We'll be talking to Donnie in a second with some questions, but we'd really like your questions. So if you have any questions for our resident expert, I'm going to call you, then please put them into Facebook. There's a little comment box where you can ask your questions. We'll put them to Donnie. This is all about your opportunity to ask away, so please do so. And then if we don't get time to answer those questions live, because Donnie has to run off in about 15 minutes' time where he's speaking at a conference in the same venue, then we will follow up with your questions as well. So please keep those questions coming. Donnie, thank you again for joining us. You're based in the United States. You're part of the CLIA team. So what does a Vice President of Maritime Policy do?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thanks for hosting this event. As a Vice President of Maritime Policy within our CLIA Global Office, I work closely with medical professionals from cruise lines, as well as other sectors of the lines that work with environmental matters and security matters. But first and foremost, especially at this time, working closely with the medical and public health professionals to understand what they're doing and to, as an industry, share information and best practices.
And that's lots of stakeholders joining that conversation, but presumably lots of experts in those departments as well.
That's right. We really rely on their expertise, and we, as an industry, can find common ground in what the lines are doing in order to develop industry-level policies. Coronavirus has obviously been a big issue and a big story in the news. What measures specifically have cruise lines taken? Yeah. So from the get-go here in January, as this was announced as a public health emergency of international concern, cruise lines immediately jumped in with to enhance the screening protocols that were already in place. Steady state operations, there's already pre-screening protocols to identify communicable diseases and prevent them from coming on board. But with this COVID-19, enhanced protocols were put in effect. They include travel and contact history screening and denials of boarding for passengers or crew coming from certain locations, as well as things have progressed and new information has become available, to enhance those even further based on the prevailing health guidance from international authorities.
So some of our viewers and some of our travel agent partners will have seen that we've been updating those protocols based on new areas. And that information comes from where? So how do we decide which destinations?
Yeah, thanks. It's a dynamic situation, but in consultation with the medical professionals at our cruise lines, we're able to assess and consult with the guidance from international authorities in order to present a recommendation to the executive level throughout the industry and institute new policies. And we try to do that as quickly as possible in conjunction with new recommendations that may come out, and in order to both prevent but also to mitigate and respond to any illnesses that may be present.
And let's be really clear, this is a industry-wide screening assessment. It's the same for all ocean cruise lines.
That's right. For all ocean-going cruise lines, members of CLIA, and certainly representing more than 95% of capacity worldwide, these are policies that are in place. They are a condition of membership in CLIA. So these are adopted. Now there may be additional measures that any individual line may still put in place.
On top of.
But as a baseline, these are industry-wide measures.
Okay, and you mentioned that we screen based on the destinations that guests have been to, but there are some additional points as well.
That's right. So a travel history to certain locations that are the largest affected areas will result in a denial of boarding onto a CLIA member cruise ship. But there's...
Go ahead. No, carry on, because I'll come back to that.
But there are also And we rely heavily on the CDC guidance
Right.
from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention as it's representative of what the guidance is worldwide. There are also measures for other countries that are listed on the CDC travel advisory page to do enhanced screening with a medical assessment, and then a decision can be made from there on whether to board or not board.
So there are incidents where boarding will be automatically denied.
That is right. That's
Okay.
correct.
And then there are also areas where additional screening takes place.
That's right.
Okay. And from a practical perspective, that happens at the point of embarkation.
It does, but communications about what we're doing starts much earlier than that, through web postings at the time of booking, pre-travel. There's communications with passengers who are intending to cruise, so that this process, which happens more in the terminal and in the embarkation area before you get on the cruise ship, is where a denial could take place. But to try to minimize the impact of such a determination, if you can back it up a little bit in advance, that's helpful.
Okay, understood. Great. And again, just a reminder, this is about your questions, so if you do have any questions, please do put them down for Donnie to answer. Let's broaden it out slightly, because I think one of the other things that's people are unsure of maybe are some of the general health protocols that happens on board cruise ships. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I can. A number of years ago, as an industry, we shared best practices and information on the cleaning and sanitation protocols on board cruise ships, just as part of steady state operations.
Right.
And it was really helpful. We produced a sample protocol, and it's an important process. The difference, regular cleaning and then sanitization with disinfectants.
Now, there's a difference, isn't there? Because one of the things I've learned is there's a difference between cleaning and sanitization.
It's an important two-step process.
Sure, yeah.
And following the guidelines for the product you're using to do the cleaning and sanitizing is important. Make sure you have the right contact times so you have the best result. In keeping spaces in common areas, especially high touch points like handrails or elevator buttons or touch screens, as well as the daily cleaning in cabins and staterooms.
Right.
So these are protocols that can be stepped up, especially in a time of heightened risk.
Right.
And but the point is that the cruise ships and their crews are well trained in these procedures, and they can also step them up when it's needed.
And then at the end of a cruise and the beginning of a cruise, presumably is a good opportunity for the ship to do some of that good work.
That's right. A turnaround day, taking passengers off and bringing new folks on is an opportunity to do a stem to stern cleaning and make sure that it's ready for the next set of passengers.
One thing we've talked a little bit about in the UK is the fact that ocean ships have medical facilities on board as well, and that's a requirement, presumably.
Yeah, and a number of years ago, the industry aligned around the American College of Emergency Physicians guidelines for cruise ship medicine, and that was an important step. It's guidance for those medical facilities and medical professionals that are on board ocean-going cruise ships. So, in addition to the cleaning and sanitization protocols, there's also in place reporting mechanisms for passengers who may feel ill, and a medical facility on board to understand what they've got and evaluate it and take appropriate measures. Importantly, those medical professionals that are on board can also make the necessary reporting to the different destinations to which they travel in accordance with international health regulations. Making timely and accurate maritime declarations of health is a really important part of the process, so that we can communicate with authorities wherever we operate to ensure that decision-making can take place.
So these are almost publicly available medical reports, or that you make available to some of the ports and destinations?
Not to some, it's to all.
It's all.
I mean, this is part of the process that cruise lines go through, a reporting process. In some areas, there's enhanced reporting. In the United States, we have a very robust program with a vessel sanitation program and twice annual inspections of every cruise ship that's calling. Other areas have similar programs in effect, but they're not all identical. But there is a common thread there, that there is reporting of any illness on board to the appropriate authorities shoreside in the destinations to which we're traveling.
So if a guest falls ill on a ship during their cruise, there are protocols to follow.
That's right.
And we'd expect the guests to make themselves aware, and then the ship then deals with that from a kind of...
Yeah, the ship encourages reporting. They want to know what passengers and crew are experiencing, so they can take necessary precautions, whether it's isolation, and to take care of them. The safety and health of passengers and crew is paramount on board ships. And actually that's true at all times, but even more so during a time like this.
Sure, and you mentioned crew, because actually a lot of people might forget that crew is also part of the same protocols and same process.
That's right. It's crew, it could be the entertainment coming on board, for, so vendors.
Yeah.
So it is
it's everybody.
Comprehensive, it applies to all.
If there is an outbreak on board, then are there certain protocols then that come into play?
There are, and this is something we've dealt with as an industry with the stomach flu, which from time to time can impact ships. It impacts
like everywhere
us,
else.
Like everywhere else.
Yeah.
But it has caused us to put in effect industry-wide sample protocols, but each ship has its own outbreak prevention and response plan. So those procedures would include thresholds for stepping up cleaning protocols, how the onboard staffs are going to react during any certain time, and what their onboard procedures are. So these outbreak prevention and response plans are in place.
And then presumably there's then a conversation between that ship and the ports and the local health authorities. So is that a protocol that's set, or is it something that happens case by case?
That's really a case by case determination. Okay. It may differ from each jurisdiction where cruise ships call globally. We can't necessarily expect that everyone is going to each different destination is going to behave the same exact way.
Yeah.
But what's important there is that there's dialogue, there's timely and accurate communication, and that we can follow prevailing health guidance from international authorities to arrive at the right outcome in any factual situation.
And how much of that, and we talk about government responses and we talk about response by health authorities, and presumably they are talking to each other around the world as well through international organizations.
So we've purposefully followed international health guidance from like the World Health Organization, which, by the way, does not have any recommendation for restrictions on travel or trade. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for their travel advisories, but also for their clinical health guidance that is provided to our healthcare professionals on board and ashore throughout the industry, so that they can make assessments based on the information they're getting on a passenger or crew member that's maybe reporting symptoms, so that they can provide the right response.
Understood. We've had a question around the response by port authorities, because we've seen instances where some ports are denying ship access. So are we working closely with those ports? Is there a process that we're following?
That's a great question. And I know it's on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
I think an important framework for this is that the World Health Organization, the International Maritime Organization have encouraged that there not be restrictions on travel, trade. That includes ships entering port, ships disembarking cargo and passengers.
Right.
And so that is a presumption or a default position. Now, in any given circumstances, there's going to be declarations of health that are going to report any illness that is reported on board. So that is a conversation and a discussion that has to happen with each of the destinations. But we need to operate from a presumption that ships are going to be calling in ports, that we have to continue to facilitate trade and disembarkation and embarkation of passengers and cargo. And that applies really throughout the whole maritime, not just our sector.
Not just cruise. I know that we're running out of time. You need to be on stage very, very shortly. But and it's a question you probably...
I think I'd rather stay here.
Well, do you know... Me too, we too. And it's a question I know you can't answer because I don't think anybody can answer. But what's next? What's going to happen next in the cruise industry? How? Because, as you say, it's a fast-evolving situation. But so what's coming?
Well, I can tell you that we're tracking the guidance every day, and we're adapting as best as possible we can to the changing circumstances. We're going to continue to follow the prevailing health guidance, and I think the lasting message here, as it is before this started and will be afterwards, is that the safety and health of passengers and crew is our top priority. So we're going to continue to adapt and respond as needed, and the industry is resilient. So it's we're going to stay prepared.
Great, thank you, and thank you for the work that you and your team do.
Thanks,
it makes a huge difference, and thank you for tuning in. If you have any more questions, then please send them to CLIA in the usual way, and we'll respond to them as quickly as we can. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back with you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks.